Hey Dress Teen Stress, I'm Abba Shrestha, and welcome back to our Teen Stories Told series, where we interview teens or individuals that just crossed their teen years to share their mental health story and give us their thoughts and opinions on teen mental health. Today I'm here with founder of Project Pink, Sanjana Kavula. Sanjana, can you please start off by telling me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course. Hi, my name is Sanjana. I'm a current freshman and trustee scholar at Rice University. I'm studying neuroscience and cognitive science, so very much in the realm of mental health, and I know a lot about that field. I'm very excited to talk more about it. I'm also a Coca-Cola scholar, and I am the co-founder of Project Pink.
All right, so right off the bat, we know that you are a leader in the youth community, having been a TEDx speaker. So, can you tell me a little bit about your journey there and what you talked about through that platform?
Yeah, of course. So, the TEDx opportunity was handed to me through my school process. So that was something I applied for, and I was able to speak on the stage. And when I was really crafting what I wanted my message to about, it was really about what I felt like I knew a lot about and what I wanted to resonate with. So for me, that was a lot about ethics in healthcare. I feel like at this age right now, we see AI popping up in every single relay. I mean, that's what a lot of startups are based about. And it really changes a lot more ethical scenarios. Like there's scenarios like the trolley problem that we think about so often. And I really wanted to talk about that in my TED Talk. So what I basically did was I went through five different ethical scenarios and I talked about how the real modern healthcare is bound to change with changes like telehealth, with like AI. And I went over those scenarios in a more like human breakdownable format.
In your work with Project Pink, you've raised not only over 2,000 plus sanitary products, but also received over $3,000 in donations, which all goes towards a multitude of women's shelters and global collaborations. So, can you tell us a little bit more about Project Pink and how it empowers women navigating mental health challenges?
Yeah, of course. So with Project Pink, it was something that we started off relatively small. We didn't actually expect to go to a nonprofit state, but it was something that me and my co-founder started in response to the HOSA Emotional Wellbeing Challenge. And our main issue there was just going around to a lot of different community places and speaking about the importance of women's mental health. And we talked a lot about like biological factors, a lot about systemic factors, how there isn't like paid maternal leave sometimes, how there isn't like maternal leave and in other scenarios and in certain jobs, and it's a lot more stigmatized. So we talked about that to a lot of different places, including like SAMHSA, Carter Blood Care Headquarters, Formula Project, and we went to a lot of different nonprofits. After that, we realized that there was a lot of youth movement that wanted to get involved in the organization. So our second year, we decided to officially brand as a nonprofit, going through the 501c process, and then we scaled up our operation. So we held a lot of events like mental health breakfast, other events as like door-to-door sales and outreach events as well. And the main purpose was to spread awareness and also learn a little bit more about what everyone else thinks in the community. And then we also expanded to policy. So we've been working on improving Title IX legislation in school boards, increasing mental health curriculum in school boards as well. And we've spoken to like Frisco school boards and like Texas school boards as well to learn more about these processes. So that's something that we're currently doing. And I think it's really inspiring to see how a lot of youth really do want to get involved. There's a lot of youth that do want to get involved in like policy changes and operations. And we currently have a team of about 50 officers that help with like every operations that we have. And we're really hoping to grow that more in the future as well.
Awesome. And as I was looking through Project Pink, I know that you have, I'd say, a pretty good platform on Instagram. And speaking of Instagram, since that's part of the whole social media realm, as a teen yourself experiencing firsthand the prevalence of social media, how do you think it affects the mental health of teenagers, and what strategies do you think can be employed to promote a healthier online environment?
Yeah, of course. So, as we know, Instagram is usually the highlight reel of everyone's lives. And I know as a point when you're just not feeling well and you're scrolling through, you kind of feel overwhelmed and overstimulated. And that is the point of Instagram. It is to be addictive, it is to draw you in, but it can really cause you to have this comparative nature where you're comparing yourself to everyone and feel even more overwhelmed. So, my number one thing that I do, especially when I'm overstimulated and overstressed, is I just take time apart from my phone, spend time with the people that I care about the most, which is like my friends and my family, and do things that really do push me apart. I have a lot of self-care activities. I know that sounds pretty cliche, but there's things that like really put you apart from your online world and helps you be a little bit more disconnected. Also, something else that we really promote in Project Pink, especially, is causing systemic change. So there are some policies that are skewed towards different people that should be changed, specifically how we address mental health in schools or in rural areas. In fact, in Texas, there is over 90% of school districts that don't have access to proper mental health support. So, one thing that we're really pushing forward is having these schools have access to that funding, having schools have access to counselors, like 24/7 counselors that are able to support students, especially when they're going through such a stressful time. So, getting involved in these type of legislation and nonprofits is something I really think can ch cause change overall.
So in high school, you were part of many different commitments, such as you were an area officer and chapter president of Host of Future Health Professionals, Key Club Executive Texas State Officer, and many other things. So how did balancing all these leadership roles and commitments impact your mental health? And what strategies did you use to maintain balance and well-being during such a busy time like this?
Yeah, of course. It's actually something that like I've talked with a lot of people about, but I feel like as a student, you're expected to carry on so many hats. I mean, you're a student, you're a high school that's supposed to keep your grades up, but you also have like all these other commitments. And I know not a lot of high schoolers especially get very, very overstimulated, and especially as you go into college, like that does keep being very prevalent in your life. But I think there is a point when you have to realize that if you do work 24/7 all the time without taking care of your sleep and taking care of your overall body, you do reach a point of burnout. And I know like in junior year when I had like so many things going on, it was very stressful and I almost constantly was like teetering that line of like burnout or not. But for me, things that I've always done is if at one point it isn't done, if it isn't done at 11 o'clock and it isn't going to be done another hour, I'm going to go to sleep. Like I will always say it to my friends. They always know I'll be like in bed by 11 o'clock. Um, but that's something I really prioritize because I think having 8 hours of sleep is really important, especially just for cognition, for a lot of other things like that. I also really prioritize being with my family and friends, like I mentioned before, like having time apart where it's like 2, 3 hours of the week that I have something that I'm looking forward to because it makes me want to work more effectively so I can get to that thing that I'm looking forward to. So just making sure you have a really big balance. I know, like a lot of people stress it, but understanding that pushing yourself another 4 hours isn't going to cause a drastic change in your overall day. It's very important.
I definitely think that is something that we need to all like remember because it can be so easy to lose sleep off of like little things that you can obviously avoid during the day to procrastinate. So that's always a really good reminder. So, how do you think that your perspective has changed on the topic of mental health from when you were a freshman in high school to now as a freshman in university?
Yeah, of course. I think it was as a freshman in high school, I didn't put that much emphasis on it. Growing up in a South Asian household, and this is a very common stigma that is there. It's more of a focus on your physical health rather than your mental health, as it's kind of seen as like a disregarded secondary thing. So for me, it was always like, oh, I have to do this next big thing. I have to focus on this like next goal of mine that I need to check off, and then I can worry about it. Like how I can worry about going hanging out with my friends or going to do this or whatever. But at one point, it does feel very lonely, does feel very like overstimulating if you have too many things going on. It gets very stressful and you get to this point of not being able to do anything. So I've always prioritized now, especially after being a part of Project Pink, and having all those experiences speaking with different legislators, speaking with like NAMI executives and things like that, I learned just like how much it is important to have that balance and be able to prioritize other moments in your life that looking down 10, 15 years, you'll cherish those moments a lot more than the small insignificant things that you might be fretting about right now. So like I mean looking back, can't even remember what I was really stressed about in high school freshman year. So I think time definitely changes things and adds a lot more perspective. And it really like urges you to remember how important it is for your overall mental health.
And then kind of adding on to that, how do you think your coping mechanisms has changed over time?
Yeah, of course. Um, I guess in the beginning of high school, I didn't really have many coping mechanisms. It was mostly just like put it off, do your work, and we'll worry about it later. Um, but now I just do address it that it is like a very thing. And I, like I've said like multiple times at this point, like I really do try to have a balance. Um, there your goals will always be there and it's very healthy to have goals to push you to do better and have more ambition, but understanding that you can't do everything in one day. You can't like create an app in a week. And setting very reasonable goals is something I do for myself. So making sure that like, hey, I have all these things, and even if I have a busy week, but I have a commitment with a friend, like I make sure I hold myself to that, and I do those things because usually when I do things that make me happy, I come back feeling more ready to do other things I need to do. So just like not closing yourself off completely and holding yourself in is something I really do believe.
And I totally agree. Like founding Address Teen Stress, since they're both different kinds of mental health organizations, I definitely realized like there were so many things in my day-to-day life that I felt like I should have prioritized more. And after hearing other people talk about mental health in such an intriguing way, I was like, oh wow, like this is definitely something that I should not only learn about more, but apply to my day-to-day lives. So that's
Mhm.
like that realization moment. So how important do you think that mental health really is during your teenage years and why?
I think mental health is extremely important, and that is not just because I'm a co-founder of an organization that really preaches it, but I think that is something that a lot of people overlook, something that's a lot more stigmatized to talk about. And I know that if people are struggling with mental health, it can seem very hard to reach out and ask for help, but people just don't sometimes realize how taxing it is and how that it can completely take over your life. So I do think that it's something you should prioritize a lot and make sure that you have good mental health and you're doing good strategies to make sure that you do before moving on to other things.
And then there's this whole controversy about how some people believe physical health is more important than mental health, other people believe mental health is more important, and some people think that they're both as equally as important. What's your 2 cents on that?
Yeah, of course. Um, Coming from a household, like I've said, I've kind of always been taught that physical health is a lot more important for mental health. Like we've never really went to like mental health checkups as a kid. It was always physicals. So I came into high school actually with that kind of view. Like even though it was like a little bit taught in middle school, it was always like, oh, like I have to be physically fine. It was never like mentally I had to like focus. So um it was definitely a really big shift, but obviously now I do believe mental health carries an equal, if not more important part than physical health, just because it's very important to take care of your mental health as it has like proven links with like your growth, your adolescence, with a lot of dopamine release. So making sure that you're taking care of yourself is really important for your overall well-being.
And then I have one last question for you, Sanjana. So, what advice would you give to someone out there who's struggling with their mental health, or like some kind of message you'd like to leave to our Address Teen Stress audience?
Yeah, of course. The first thing that I would say is just don't be afraid to reach out for help. There is a lot of resources out there, and I know because as a nonprofit, I've been collaborating with a lot of these resources, but there's so many free, anonymous resources that are available for teenagers, and making sure that you put aside that time to go through and address your mental health problems is very important because if you do not have a strong foundation, it's very, very hard to grow and have pursuit in other things if you're not feeling your overall mental health and well-being as strong as it is. So don't be afraid to reach out for your help and know that there's a huge community waiting to help.
All right. Thank you so much, Sanjana, for sharing your story with us today, and giving us advice and what you think about regarding the topic of mental health. And as well, thank you so much for helping us address teen stress.